Okay, let me start by thanking our fans, our student section. I thought the game day environment here today was as good as any in the country. And I think what we're going to find out here at Rutgers is as the teams from the Big Ten continue to come in, it'll be like that on a weekly basis. And that's exciting, I think, for our program. And I'm glad a lot of the people that were here today got a chance to see that. We're a really hurting team right now. You know, you play a close game against a good football team and you win at the end like we did in the first game. There's exuberance. And then you play a close game and you don't win, and it's devastating. And it's probably a good word I could use for our team right now. The reality is, in a game like that, it comes down to the fourth quarter. They made one more play than we did. My hat is off to them. James got a good football team. And like I said, they made one more play than we did this evening. Questions?
Coach, was there anything differently they did in the second half to kind of mix things up a bit?
I don't think they did anything differently. They have an excellent defensive lineman, number 98. They've got a good defensive line in general, but number 98, we couldn't handle him in the second half. And when you look at the lack of production on offense, it won't be the only place to look, but it's probably the place to start. You know, that kid's a good football player, and we didn't do enough to control him. He controlled the second half of that game.
With the 5 interceptions, just what did you see from Gary, and how much of a concern is that?
That's a concern. You know, you lose the turnover battle, it's hard to win the game. You know, so there's no doubt it's a concern. You know, the first one's a tip. One of them is a shot to a guy who makes a lot of plays for us, number 4. You know, I know one of them was a good decision, bad location, so it's a physical error. You know, but you know, is it a concern? Yeah, absolutely, it's a concern. You know, it's hard to win a game. You don't win a lot of games if you turn it over 5 times.
Kyle, you just said one was a bad decision. Was it the decision? I mean, I know you have to watch the film, but was it?
No, I said good decision, bad location.
Okay.
I got to look at the other 2. They may be. I don't know yet. What were we going to say? What was the question?
I was going to say, is it the decision making that's the concern?
One of them was a tip. One of them's a shot. One of them's a good decision, bad location. The other 2 I have to look at on film.
Was there a concern with the way the run game was going because of how their nose guard was playing? Is that why you kind of stuck with the pass in the second half?
I knew going into the game that it was going to be a test of wills running the football. You know, I knew we were going to be good against the run. I knew they were going to be good against the run. Statistically, if you look at what they've done, I think teams were averaging 1.7 yards a carry against them going into the game. I thought we ran the ball okay in the first half. Not great, but effectively. You know, we had enough that it allowed us to continue to run the ball. And I did not feel that way in the second half.
It seems like after all the talk in the offseason about the progress that Gary has made, and we're back at the same place where he's inaccurate and mistake-prone. I mean, is there any thought that you might have to giving someone else a try?
Not right now. You know, we just got done playing a really emotional game, Steve. You know, we're going to look at the film. We're going to evaluate every player in the program on the film, and then we'll make the personnel decisions on Sunday and Monday. But I wouldn't say that right now. Just getting out of that game. I think it's just too emotional a situation right now.
What do you think of Hackenberg's performance, especially in that final drive?
Well, he's poised. You know, he's a good player. We knew that going in. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the country. And, I mean, I think we sacked him 5 times. But he stays in there, and again, he makes the play at the end of the game. You know, they made the play at the end, and we didn't. And I'm disappointed. But I'm not disappointed in any one person. I'm disappointed in us as a program that we didn't make that play.
Kyle, obviously your defense gives you a tremendous effort. Is it fair to expect them to come up with one more stop at the end there where they just out of gas at the end?
I think if you ask them, they'd say yes. Yeah, I think again, my experience tells me that there's going to be games you're going to have to win that are high scoring, and there's going to be games that you're going to have to win that are low scoring, and you win them and lose them all as a team. You know, I was excited about our defensive performance in the first game, even though we gave up points. You know, because I felt like we made enough plays to win the game, and that's ultimately the judge of what you do on Saturdays is that scoreboard and who's 1-0.
Kyle, a lot of times you refer to that statement, you know, about you only get that first chance to make the first impression. I mean, do you think you made one at all? Is it just a disappointing one, or, you know, what do you think?
For our football team, we're disappointed in the impression we made because we're 0-1. For our program and the people that were here today that got a snapshot view of what our football program is, I think they had a great experience before the game. I think that the environment of the game was as good as it's been here, and I've been here for 10 years. I think I've been here for most of the good ones. So it's as good as it's ever been. I don't think those things are going to go away because we were 0-1 today. Next time we come in the stadium, I think it'll be the same thing.
Kyle, when you talk about Penn State's nose guard, but offensively,
3 technically.
Yeah,
Number
I'm
98.
sorry. When you look at your offense, though, what went wrong for you guys, do you think, in the second half that you were able to put points on the board?
We just weren't able to run the ball efficiently. If we don't run the ball efficiently, it's hard for us to run the offense. We end up behind the sticks, and then one of the toughest things to do if you're playing against a good defensive line, and you're in the must-pass situations, it gets even harder. And I think that's without having seen the film yet, that to me is the story of the second half for us on offense.
Kyle, what did you guys do differently on defense? Because obviously it was the best game you've had on defense in a long time. Why were you able to get to Hackenberg so frequently?
I think it would be the same reason. I think we did a good job stopping them from running the football. That they had 33 rushes for 64 yards, and some of that was on quarterback scrambles. So I think we did a good job going into the game. I had said if we can make them one-dimensional, we'll have a chance to get to him, and we did.
How did you feel about the defensive game plan? I know you said during the week you were probably going to try and bring 4, but obviously you mixed that up. But the front 4 got there. Just how'd you feel about that, how that came together?
Looking at it on the field, I think we had a good defensive game plan.
Got time for 2 more.
What'd you say to them after the game?
It hurts. It should hurt. But in life, I will not allow them to be defined by their losses. The clock's already ticking on next week. And that doesn't mean you can just forget about this. You don't forget about it. But we'll come in tomorrow, we'll make the corrections, and we have to move forward because the next game is coming. And the one thing you can't do is you can't allow one loss to get you twice. And if you spend too much time thinking about this after you've evaluated, after you've owned your mistakes, and after you've made the corrections, you're allowing it to distract you from what's coming next. And we've got another game coming.
Who you lean on the most in the locker room? I know captains, but to kind of make sure you get that message through when you start focusing.
Yeah, I think
on
it's got to start with your seniors and with your captains. And sure enough, I go in the locker room and I bring the team up, and the guy standing right in front of me is number 91. So not a senior, but one of our captains. And it's that kind of leadership that I know is going to allow us to come through this on the other side.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.